Good morning. Today we look at Numbers 28, 29, and 30. Chapter 28, God is reminding the people of the daily sacrifice, the Sabbath sacrifice, Pentecost, the New Year, and different, the festivals when they would offer burnt offerings. And it's just, it's still, to me, it's, an awful lot daily. That this daily offering is the two male lambs, a year old daily, one in the morning and one in the twilight, and some flour and then we get to verse 9 in chapter 28 that talks about a Sabbath offering, and this is the only place that the Sabbath offering is mentioned. It wasn't talked about in Exodus or Leviticus, but it's only here, and it's not brought up again in Deuteronomy. But the Sabbath offering is, and as though, this is what God is saying to the people. You do this as a daily reminder of who I am to you, your God, and that, you follow me and you do as I say, and I will take care of you. This is the promise. And then at the beginning of the months, and they kind of were on a lunar schedule, we're on a 12-month schedule. Well, and we know that the moon is on a different, that's not on a schedule like our 31 or 30 or 28 days. It's, the moon is kind of a 28-day cycle or whatever it is. And so this was kind of where they were looking at with their months and everything that way. And so there was a daily sacrifice and a Sabbath sacrifice and a monthly sacrifice that was to be done. And then on the day of first fruits, again, that's another sacrificial day, and that they take care of. And then chapter 29 begins with, on the first day of the 7th month, you will have a holy convocation, and you will not work. And the first day of the 7th month is kind of their New Year celebration. And I just think, well, why not call that the first month? That would make most sense to me, but it's, figuring out all those timings. And of course, I don't exactly try to figure out exactly what month or anything that is for them that way. But the New Year offering is, on the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not work. It's a day to blow the trumpets and offer a burnt offering, a pleasing odor. And again, I've commented on that burnt offering being a pleasing odor, because we know what hair is, we know what that, it's not a smell that's pleasing to us anyway. And then on the 10th day of verse 7, on the 10th day of the 7th month, you will have a holy convocation. Deny yourselves. You'll offer a burnt offering of a young bull, a ram, 7 males lamb, and then on each day these different offerings. And on the 15th day of the month, you'll have a holy convocation, and you will offer 13 bulls and 2 rams and 14 male lambs, and then on the 14th day it's take off one, 12, and so it's 13, 12, 11, 10, and you start reading and you expect, well, it's going to go all the way down to 1. Well, no, it doesn't go quite that far, but it's still a lot of offering, so you start on that 15th day of the first month, and then on the next day, that'd be the day 16, the way I look at it, and day 17 is 11 bulls, and I've actually written those numbers in my Bible at some point in time, 16th, 17th, 18th. The 19th is the 5th day of the month, of the convocation, so it's the 19th day of the month, the 5th day of the convocation, and again, it's just, keep track of all of this is a lot more. And then verse 35, finally, on the 8th day, so this would be the 22nd day of that 7th month, you will have a solemn assembly. You shall not work, and it's a day, again, dedicated to the Lord. And then, the verse 39, you shall offer to the Lord at your appointed festivals, in addition to your votive offerings, your freewill offerings, your burnt offerings, your grain offerings, your drink offerings, and your offerings of well-being. You know, that's a lot of offering. And we struggle with Sunday morning offering, right? Yeah, or maybe once a month, whatever. That's what I do once a month. I write a check. But it's a reminder, I think, for them that, you know, God has chosen them, God has led them, and is leading them, and providing for them. I mean, they're not staying in one place and growing crops and raising livestock yet. You know, they're still in this wandering stage, and it has to be a struggle. But verse 40, the last verse of chapter 29, Moses told the Israelites everything just as the Lord had commanded. And I think about following instructions, you know, and you know, you like some of these things that I make, you know, these cutting boards I make, I need to follow instructions, and I'm working on something now that I don't have instructions for, and it's the kind of, okay, now what was I supposed to do next, and you know, how do I, you know, and to keep it all tracked, keep it all straight, you know, and to have it written down so we know what to do. And it's just like our order of service on a Sunday morning that, you know, we begin, you know, on a day we have communion. I like to begin with a brief order of confession and forgiveness, and then a hymn, and then, you know, it's that structure. And this is what God is putting in place for the Israelites: the structure of worship, the structure of trusting God, the structure of being something other than slaves in Egypt. And many of these Israelites that are, you know, traveling, I mean, that's all they've known, was to be a slave. And that's all their ancestors had known for 400 years, was to be a slave. And so to begin trusting something new and doing something different took time for them. And of course, you know, when they were used to things as they were, it's really different for them. And many of us have moved, or we have changed, or, you know, you retire, and all of a sudden your life looks different, and it takes time to settle into it and get everything figured out and kind of running a little bit smooth again, right? Yeah. And because the structure of our days, I mean, is something that keeps us in line. And when we change that daily structure, you know, it can mess with our minds, it can mess with our physique, with our physical being, and all of that. So anyway, chapter 30 God talks about vows to the Lord, vows to other people, and if a man makes a vow, verse 2, when a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself to a pledge, he shall not break his word. And, you know, when I was growing up, you know, a man's word was considered good. And if you broke your word, you know, that was different. And in today's society, you know, somebody's word doesn't carry quite as much respect or expectation, maybe, you know, of this person carrying it out. But, you know, God says, you know, you make a vow, your word is your pledge. And, you know, they didn't need to have written contracts anyway. And then verse 3, when a woman makes a vow to the Lord or pledges herself, while she's within her father's house in her youth, her father can either affirm that vow or he can say, nope, you can't do that. So, you know, if a girl is still living with her parents, her father can make her vow not valid. And then it's the same after this woman gets married. I mean, and this is just a part of that patriarchal society, which I'm sure glad we aren't as much in that anymore. But, you know, if she marries, verse 6, if she marries while obligated by her vows or any other thoughtless, you know, her husband hears and says nothing, well, then her vows stand. But if her husband objects, well, then her vow is nullified. And it is just, you know, taking I think, taking away the rights of women, which of course isn't right. And chapter 30 ends with, these are the statutes of the Lord, reminding the people, reminding us of what God has, his laws and his ways of living that he had prescribed for the Israelite people.